1990s, there were two economists named Bernardsey and Thaler, and they ran an experiment on some investors. And what they wanted to know is what would happen if you let people check their portfolios constantly versus rarely. And what they found was the investors who checked constantly felt worse, not despite checking more, but because of it. Every glance gave their brain a fresh data point to worry about, even when the long-term trend was fine. Checking felt like it was managing the risk, but it was actually manufacturing more anxiety than the risk itself justified. And I think the study is really interesting to think about every time I watch someone do something like ask their partner, "Are we okay?" for the third time in one evening. And the challenge with reassurance is that it works. That's the problem. If reassurance didn't work, nobody would keep doing it. Your partner seems a little bit off, so your brain asks, "Are they mad at me?" So you ask them directly, "Are we okay?" "Yeah, of course, I'm just tired." You got some relief, problem solved, right? No, not that simple. 45 minutes later, "Well, but they did seem kind of annoyed when they said that." So then you ask again, you get reassured again. And then later that night, one more time, just to be sure. But here's the strange part. If reassurance actually solved the problem, you wouldn't need more of it. The fact that you keep needing it is the tell that there's a continued problem there. Before going further, though, I want to say clearly, reassuring people isn't a mistake. It's I don't know if most of is quite the correct thing to say, but it's a lot of what close relationships are made of. A kid wakes up from a nightmare and you tell them that you're right there. A friend bombs a job interview and you tell them that it's not the end of the world. That's connection, and connection is good for you. So the interesting question isn't, did someone reassure you? It's, what are you actually asking the reassurance to do? Sometimes it's connection. Sometimes it's strategy for making an uncomfortable feeling disappear. Those can look identical from the outside and function completely differently from the inside, actually. So let's say that your partner does seem distant and the thought shows up, what if they're losing interest? Anxiety spikes, you ask, they say they still love you. Anxiety drops. Here's the thing, your brain doesn't necessarily learn, oh, my partner loves me. It may have learned something else entirely. When I feel uncertain, asking makes the feeling go away. That's a very different lesson, and it's the one that sticks. So the next time your partner takes 10 extra minutes to text back, your brain already knows the procedure. Ask, feel better, lesson, whole process, and the whole lesson's reinforced again. And that's the thing, uncertainty can feel really dangerous, and reassurance can make that disappear temporarily. Therefore, you seek reassurance whenever you're uncertain, but that loop run enough times becomes the entire operating system. The reason this is so hard to stop is that reassurance doesn't punish you. It rewards you. We love being rewarded. Our brains love being rewarded. If asking for reassurance were followed by something unpleasant, you'd stop doing it fast. Instead, you get relief, and relief is one of the most effective teachers a brain has. Anxious action, relief. The brain files that away as a strategy worth repeating. Maybe your version is checking, maybe it's Googling, maybe it's replaying a conversation for the 9th time, or asking 3 friends the same question, or asking an AI chatbot to rephrase the same reassurance 17 different ways. No judgment, I know exactly what's happening in some of those chat histories. Every time the strategy produces relief, the brain gets one more piece of evidence that it was necessary. What it never gets to learn is the other possibility. I could have just had the feeling and not resolved it. And just to reiterate, reassurance doesn't require another person. You notice a strange sensation in your body. You Google it. First article says it's probably nothing. Sigh of relief. Second article is titled 7 Signs You Should Never Ignore. You click it, obviously. Now you're anxious again, though, so you keep searching until something calms you down. Tomorrow the sensation returns and your brain already knows where to go. Google. And same pattern with decisions. You're buying a car, you read the reviews, watch the videos, build the spreadsheet, make the choice, and then you keep researching anyway. At that point, you're not gathering information. You already have enough. You're hunting for a feeling, and that feeling is certainty. And your brain will always promise you it's just one more thread away. We're so close to the certainty. And what you see with this, though, is that when somebody has OCD, it makes this pattern almost impossible to miss. They have an intrusive thought that arrives. What if I'm secretly a bad person? So you review your behavior. You ask someone directly. They say you're a good person. Relief for about 4 minutes until the next thought arrives. Well, they don't know about the thing that I thought yesterday. So you disclose that too. You're reassured again. Then maybe they're only saying that because they love you. Now you need reassurance about the reliability of reassurance. And you answer the question, and anxiety files an appeal. You answer the appeal, anxiety finds new evidence. This can run indefinitely because the mistake was assuming that answering well enough would end the trial going on in your brain. And anxiety can always generate one more question. It has an unlimited docket of just one more. And here's what I think is the most useful reframe in this whole topic. Does he still love me? Am I sick? Did I make the wrong call? These sound like questions, but underneath them is often a completely different request. Make this feeling go away. That's why the answer never sticks. You already know your partner said things are fine. You already know the doctor wasn't worried. The problem was never missing information. The problem is that you still feel uncertain and you've been treating that feeling as proof the question wasn't really answered. And those aren't the same thing. And mixing them up is basically the whole engine of this entire loop in general. You can have all the information you need and still feel completely unsettled. And so the useful move here, and this is more or less the argument behind acceptance and commitment therapy, isn't deciding whether the thought is true. It's noticing that I'm having the thought that something's wrong is a very different sentence than something's wrong. In asking whether chasing this particular thought is actually taking you anywhere that you want to go. And really, when you think about it, some uncertainty has an answer, but most of it doesn't. So if we go back to the investor study that we talked about at the beginning for a second, your bank balance is a resolvable question. You open up your bank app, you check it, you get a number, and that number is simply true until something changes it. Check once and you actually know. The future value of your portfolio is not that kind of question. You can check it every hour for every day for the rest of your life and you'll never arrive at a number that's guaranteed to hold tomorrow. And that's not a failure of checking, that's just the category of question that it is. And most reassurance seeking mixes those two categories up. Some of what you're anxious about really is resolvable. A symptom a doctor can actually rule out. A fact a quick conversation can actually settle. Ask, get the answer, done. But a lot of what people chase reassurance for is the second kind. Will they still love me in 5 years? Will this decision turn out to be the right one? Will something bad happen to someone I love? Those unfortunately don't have a number you can check into existence no matter how many times you ask. So sometimes reassurance is asked to do the impossible. Your partner says, I love you. Fine, that's reassurance and there's nothing wrong with it. That's a good thing. But then the mind asks, how do I know they'll still love me in 5 years? You don't, and neither do they. They can promise you they always will and mean every word of it, and there still won't be proof because nobody has access to the future. Not your partner, not your doctor, not you. Once reassurance is asked to convert that kind of uncertainty into certainty, it will never be enough, not because you haven't asked the right person yet, but because certainty about the future was never on the menu to begin with. And that can sound bleak. I'd argue it's the opposite, though. If certainty was never available, you can stop treating it as a prereq for continuing to live your life. Because in reality, the finish line is constantly moving. A lot of us are quietly waiting to feel safe enough, certain enough, reassure enough, and then we'll finally relax into the relationship, stop worrying about our health, make the decision, start the thing, whatever the case is. But anxiety is very good at moving the finish line. Answer one question, it produces another. Solve one scenario, it invents another one. So the more useful question isn't, how do I finally convince myself everything's fine? It's, am I willing to have this uncertainty and still move towards what matters to me? Willingness doesn't mean liking the discomfort, and it doesn't mean just rolling over and giving up. It just means not making the discomfort's disappearance a condition for continuing to live life. And yes, sometimes working on things can feel worse before feeling better. If you're used to getting reassurance every time anxiety shows up, withholding it will not feel calm. It will feel more chaotic than that. Your brain has a procedure where it introduces a scary possibility. You check, it stands down, and skipping a step in that procedure doesn't feel like relief, it'll feel like a malfunction for the first while. But that's not evidence that you're doing it wrong. The goal was never an immediate drop in anxiety, as appealing as that is. Chasing that is just as reassurance seeking, but it's just wearing a different costume, a different outfit. The actual target is being able to feel uncertain and still choose your next move based on what matters to you, rather than on whatever would quiet the feeling the fastest. Capacity gets built the boring way, through repetition, not through a single good conversation. So, next time you have the pull towards reassurance and it shows up, pause before asking and try to get specific. What am I actually looking for right now? Sometimes the answer is real information, and asking is completely reasonable. If your partner snapped at you and you genuinely don't know why, ask. That's a resolvable question. But if they've already told you 5 times that they're fine and the urge is for the 6th answer, try naming it instead of resolving it. I'm noticing the thought that something's wrong and the urge to check on it. Say it almost exactly like that, silently, and notice it's a different sentence than something's wrong. Then go back to what you were doing, not because you proved everything's fine, but because you practiced not needing the proof. And really, this all goes well beyond reassurance seeking. Reassurance seeking is just one version of something almost everyone does. Organizing large parts of our lives around eliminating an uncomfortable feeling before acting on what actually matters. Not applying because you don't feel confident yet. Not asking someone out because rejection is possible. Not deciding because you might regret it later. Not starting because you can't guarantee a particular outcome. The mind keeps making the same offer. Solve this one uncertainty first, and then you're free to live. And some people spend years standing still, waiting for permission that was never going to arrive. So try this. Next time you feel the pull, don't ban yourself from asking. That just swaps one rigid rule for another. And I'll tell you the secret. Rigidity is exactly what we're trying to get rid of. Instead, get curious about what you're actually after. Information, connection, or certainty. If it's certainty, sit with a harder question. What if I don't get to know? Not everything will definitely be fine, not I'm overreacting, just maybe I don't get to know. And then the real question, what do I want to do next anyway, given what matters to me? So go make dinner, finish the work, go on the date, put the phone down. Whatever that is. Your mind has an unlimited supply of questions. You don't have an unlimited supply of hours to answer it. I mean, I guess in theory you do. In practice, you don't. At some point, the choice is yours. Spend another hour chasing certainty that was never available, or notice the pull and go live the hour in a different way, the way that you actually want to. And that's not giving up on the relationship, the decision, or the person. It's the difference between being supported by people and needing them to make uncertainty vanish. Or, ChatGPT or Google, whatever. One of those helps you live, and the other makes the room you're allowed to live in smaller every time you use it. Your little world caves in more and more. You don't have to become someone who never needs reassurance again, but you have to notice once in a while when your brain is asking for one more answer and let the questions stay open anyway. So maybe you don't always need the answer, but maybe you get better at living with the question, as hard as that is.